Hi folks, Richard Chessor here, nutritionist with the Athleat team, and welcome to a short video on fat. So, dietary fat then, is it the villain of health and obesity, or is it the wrongly imprisoned nutrient recently released and on the rampage? Or most likely it's somewhere in between. So hopefully, as per normal, Athleat can give you a nice and simple, straightforward message about your fat intake. Now, our views on dietary fat from both a public health and sporting performance perspective have changed quite a lot in the last 5 years. The interpretation of some of the real early research on fat, particularly saturated fat, pointed strongly to a link between fat intake and cardiovascular disease. But that research has been largely criticised quite recently, but despite that, fat remains a key consideration for both the health-conscious individual and the general public, with the message of eating fat makes you fat still widely held and still quite prominent. But much more recently, a revolution in our approach to fat has taken hold, with a surge in higher fat diets such as low carb, high fat, ketogenic diets, Banting type diets, and so on. Now, certainly in my opinion, all of these diets, like any diet, has its place, but perhaps in addition to the simple question of do they work, we should be asking when are they appropriate. Now, we certainly know that one diet never fits all, and we should be smart enough to realise that a plan works or doesn't work relative to the time and the environment in which it's employed in. So increasing fat intake for one individual might work really quite well, and not so well for others. But even though high fat diets or higher fat diets have their place, one of the significant issues I see with people employing them is the risk of being far too liberal with their fat intake, and particularly their sources of fat intake. Essentially, anything goes. If it's fat, it's on the plate. So from dripping to crackling to fried chicken and cheese, if it contains fat, it seems to be permissible to be a part of the diet. So I like to ask the question, why do we treat fat this way? Surely just like our carbohydrate and protein sources, we should be a little bit more picky, a bit more selective about our sources of fat. Which leads us nicely to our athlete recommendation then. So concerning fat, if it's naturally occurring fat, then proceed. If it's not naturally occurring, then tread very cautiously. So a naturally occurring fat would be something such as the fat found in nuts or olive oil or avocados or meat or eggs. A non-naturally occurring fat would be things found in, or the fats found in things like margarine, biscuits, pastries, pies, highly processed vegetable oils, and therefore most fast foods and fried foods as well. So we eat the natural and we shun the man-made, but of course this, always with the caveat that this is just a simple rule. Okay, it's not a definitive rule. It's never consent, therefore, to eat as many eggs fried in butter as you might like. Here at Athleat, we completely understand that fats are complex, and this is a gross oversimplification of their classification, i.e. man-made versus naturally occurring. We completely understand that this rule doesn't distinguish between the different types of saturates that we find in fats, so whether it be polyunsaturated, monounsaturated, or fully saturated fats. But we hope that providing you follow a nice and varied diet, then you're actually going to have a suitable profile of fat intake by following that simple rule. However, also as we said earlier, we should still be picky about our sources of fat, so just because it's naturally occurring doesn't mean it automatically should be on the plate. For example, frying or roasting a nice piece of salmon, so an oily fish, in a good quality coconut oil is a great dish, but it's probably got enough fat in it for a single meal. We don't necessarily therefore need to add a side of avocado or have a salad that's dripping in olive oil and serve it alongside. That would be unnecessarily excessive to include them all in one meal. Of course, unless your calorie intake needs to be particularly high, but it's probably a wiser strategy to spread your fat intake a little bit more evenly throughout the day or even throughout the week. But one thing is clear though, avoiding those heavily processed man-made fats is a very good idea. They're certainly the ones that raise your LDL cholesterol. They are strongly associated with heart disease and cancers, and of course they're very readily stored as adipose tissue, as body fat. So, wrap it up then. When we're thinking about fats, we should be thinking about provenance and minimal processing, which of course is another excellent idea on why, or another excellent reason why we should be eating Athleat meat with its grass-fed beef and free-roaming poultry and wild seafood. So, with fats, if it's naturally occurring, proceed, but if it's not naturally occurring, tread a lot more cautiously. Thanks for watching.